Okay, so here's our little overview on the gods in the Odyssey, which we'll just take through on the key points that you probably need to know. Firstly, clearly there's a thing about immortal and mortal relationships. And the first thing is that the immortals are involved in everything. Their whole interest is manipulation, it's toying with mortals. They like to come in disguise, as we know from Athene, all kinds of different disguises, but also other gods. Hermes comes in disguise as well to Odysseus. And it's only a hero who can recognize them. In fact, Telemachus nearly recognizes Athene, doesn't he, in book one, which shows that he's beginning to get a heroic status. Mortals generally are fearful of the gods. They are worried that the gods are going to do something to them. And so whenever unexpected things happen, there's a suspicion that that could be because of the gods. It could be trying to trick mortals, could be trying to trick them into doing something. And that's why people tend to explain things in terms of the gods the whole time. At the same time, the gods like sacrifices. If you see somebody sacrificing in the Odyssey, you're seeing a sign of piety, of good religious behavior. And that would be expected. If you see them failing to sacrifice, that's a suggestion of a failure to observe religious duties. So the immortal-mortal relationship is not a friendly one necessarily. It's usually one that's to do with manipulation and fear. Now, obviously, underpinning everything with the gods is fate, justice, and revenge. And in book one, Zeus says, "What a lamentable thing it is that men should blame the gods and regard us as the source of their troubles, when it is their own transgressions which bring them suffering that was not their destiny." Look at what he's saying there. It's their own transgressions. Even though immortals do meddle in the lives of mortals, what Zeus is saying is that actually human beings bring these things upon themselves. That's right at the start, isn't it? And actually, the whole of the Odyssey then says, or shows us examples of that. The crew die, and why do they die? They ate their cattle despite being warned, and despite making an oath themselves. The suitors die because they flouted Xenia. They've shown that they're wicked because they're planning to kill Telemachus on his way back from his travels. They are doing just the same. It's their own transgressions. And of course, Odysseus and his men, they go back to Aeolus' island, and Aeolus' interpretation of why they've come back is because the gods must detest them, and they've done something wrong, which has caused the gods to push them back. There must be something that they've done wrong, is Aeolus' conclusion. So fate, justice, and revenge is quite a complex and broad point, but Zeus is keen for us to know that actually it's human beings' own responsibility that drives all of this. Clearly as well, Xenia is a very, very significant area in this. We know that Zeus is the protector of beggars and strangers. And in book 6, Nausicaa actually says this to her maids, doesn't she? When she's getting them to actually clean Odysseus or wash him or whatever, she actually says, "This man is an unfortunate wanderer. We must look after him, since all strangers and beggars come under the protection of Zeus." And then Odysseus reminds Polyphemus in book 6, when he asks for hospitality, Zeus is the god of guests. Guests are sacred to him. So just bear in mind that Xenia isn't just a convention. It's linked very closely to the rule or the law of Zeus. The failure to offer Xenia is a failure to respect Zeus. And so when you see the fate of some people who subvert the rules of Xenia, so Polyphemus or the suitors, remember it's actually their failure to respect Zeus that is being punished, not necessarily they haven't been very hospitable or they haven't been very nice. So there are relationships between mortals and immortals. We have fate, justice, revenge. We have Xenia. They're all features of it. There are also the specific gods themselves. And in each of these, I've popped some epithets down the left-hand side, the commonest or the best, the ones I like of the key figures. So Zeus is the top dog when it comes to gods. He doesn't intervene a lot. He's not involved in lots of actions in the plot, but he represents fate and the gods and justice. So he's actually the arbiter of fate. And that explains why the other gods come rushing in to see him the whole time. They're always looking to try and get him to come down on their side in various bits of the story. Zeus makes that key point we talked about before. that it's all about men blaming the gods when they bring it upon themselves. And remember that the Xenia thing is going to be all about the transgression of people who ignore the laws of Zeus. So, for example, the suitors do lust after Penelope. That's not why they're all killed. They're killed because they've ignored the laws of Zeus. Athene. Well, remember in book 3, though we may not read this in the exam text itself, Nestor, who Telemachus has gone to go and find out about where Odysseus might be, he says, "Never in my life have I seen the gods display such open affection as Pallas Athene showed in her championship of Odysseus." Now, he's talking about the Iliad and Troy, where Athene is favouring Odysseus. But that just gives you this sense of where Athene's coming from in the whole of the story. Her help is there all the way through books 1 to 8. You can think of all kinds of examples. She gets him off Calypso's island. She hides him in a mist. She rescues him from the sea. She's championing him in front of the Phaeacians. She's a little girl, helping him with directions, etc. She's not present in the flashback episode, books 9 to 12. So it might be that you'd like to think about why that might be. What is it that could explain that? As we get to books 13 onwards, the last section, she then becomes a kind of co-conspirator with Odysseus, doesn't she? Leading up to the destruction of the suitors. So Athene, absolutely the on the side of Odysseus, cheering for Odysseus. Poseidon, in the meantime, you almost look at those epithets. They can't be said in ordinary voices, can they? It has to be Lord of the Earthquake, Earth Shaker, Girdler of the Earth, Sustainer of the Earth. Poseidon has this kind of great epic cartoon baddie type feel to him, doesn't he? He's driven by relentless malice in fulfilling Polyphemus' curse. The curse is that Odysseus should arrive back in Ithaca late, in wretched plight, having lost all his comrades, in a foreign ship, let him find trouble in his home. It's not enough to just say he's going to be late, is it? We've got to pile all the rest of it on. But that is the curse that drives all the way through. He also intervenes by punishing the Phaeacians for taking Odysseus home. And there's a weird kind of thing in book 11 as well, where down in the underworld, Tiresias says that after Odysseus has killed the suitors, he's got to go off and make a sacrifice to some people who don't know about the sea and don't eat salt, strangely. He's got to go and make a sacrifice to Poseidon, and he's got to carry an oar with him. He has to carry that oar all the way along until he finds these people, and he'll know that these people are the ones he has to make the sacrifice for, because they are going to come up to him and not be able to recognise the oar that he's carrying, and actually they're going to think that it's a winnowing fork or winnowing blade, that in some way he's actually going to be needing to make his sacrifice there. Why he's got to make a sacrifice is a bit unclear, to be perfectly honest. But whenever he actually finally does come to this point, it's brought Poseidon maybe back on side in the whole argument. And then finally there's Hermes, isn't there? Hermes just got 2 key appearances. He carries Zeus's message to Calypso. In book 10, he gives the moly to Odysseus. Interestingly, he's not explained why he's there. Circe later says to Odysseus, this guy Hermes came to visit me and said that you would come and visit me on your way back from Troy. You must be Odysseus. So obviously he's involved in some way in these messages, but that's not explained by Homer. And there's also a little bit where Hermes is mentioned in part of the story in book 8, when the gods are laughing at Ares and Aphrodite, who've been caught together by Hephaestus. So Hermes is a sort of a lesser figure there. But hopefully that gives you a summary of those key gods, the key elements of Xenia and of fate, and the way in which the gods are integral to the whole of the plot of the Odyssey.